Rain hammers the alley. Blood pools faster than she can stop it. "Stay with me!" Teresa's hands work on autopilot, compression rhythm drilled into muscle memory. The man's eyes snap open. Sharp. Calculating. Even through pain. "You're a nurse?" "ER nurse. 3 years." She doesn't look up. "Don't talk. Save your strength." Black SUVs screech around the corner. Men in dark suits flood the alley, surrounding them. "Hyung-nim!" One drops beside her, shoving her hands aside. "We've got him." Teresa's breath stops. Hyung-nim. Boss. The lieutenant grips her shoulder, not rough, but final. "You saved someone very important tonight, nurse. Kang Young-min, the ghost of Gangnam." The name punches through her shock. She's heard it whispered in hospital corridors when gang victims arrive with injuries no one reports. The man who controls half of Seoul's underworld. The man whose enemies disappear. Young Min's blood-stained hand reaches up, touches her cheek. His voice is gravel and smoke. "Don't forget this moment." The lieutenant leans close. "There are people who'd kill you just for keeping him alive. Speak of this to no one." Before she can answer, they're lifting young Min into the SUV. Someone grabs her arm. Not a question. A command. The door slams. The engine roars, and Teresa realizes her careful life just ended in a rain-soaked alley. If this story already pulled you in, don't just watch and disappear. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. It actually helps this channel survive. And drop your city or country in the comments so I know where you're watching from. Teresa Hanna's hands don't shake in emergencies. Not when gunshot victims crash through the doors at 3 a.m. Not when she's elbow deep in someone's chest cavity doing compressions. Not even when the gang members show up demanding to see their dying friends, violence simmering behind their eyes. Her hands shake after. In the bathroom. In her car. In the apartment she shares with Daniel, where she lies awake counting her heartbeats until the Xanax kicks in. Anxiety disorder, the psychiatrist called it. Childhood trauma, her therapist said. Though Teresa doesn't talk about the night her father disappeared, about the men in dark suits who came asking questions her mother couldn't answer, about learning early that some dangers you survive by becoming invisible. So she built a life of careful routines, predictable shifts at Myeongdong General Hospital. A fiancé in pharmaceutical sales who promises suburbs and safety, a world with edges she can see, control, manage. Tonight, that world ends. The man bleeding out in the alley isn't random violence. He's Kang Young-min, the ghost of Gangnam, Seoul's most feared crime lord. And the compassion that makes her good at her job just painted a target on her back. As the SUV tears through Seoul's rain-slicked streets with her trapped inside, Teresa's hands finally shake, because the strangers surrounding her aren't taking her to safety. They're taking her to him. And the lieutenant's words echo in her skull. You saved someone very important. There are people who would kill you for that. What Teresa doesn't know, this isn't the first time Kang Young-min has saved her. The wounded man's hand suddenly catches her wrist. His grip is weak, but deliberate. When he speaks, his voice carries an accent that wraps around English words like silk over stone. Listen to Min-seok. You come, or you die here. It's not a threat. It's a fact. They lift him, careful, practiced, and someone's hand closes around Teresa's elbow, guiding her toward the open SUV door. She thinks about running, about screaming. But this alley is empty except for rain and blood and men who move like soldiers. She climbs in. The door slams. The engine roars. And through the tinted windows, Seoul blurs into streaks of neon and darkness. Beside her, the wounded man's breathing grows shallow. Teresa's training overrides her fear. She presses her jacket against his wound, checking his pulse with her free hand. "Sir, I need you to stay awake. What's your name?" The lieutenant, Min-seok, answers from the front seat. "Kang Young-min, and you just saved the ghost of Gangnam." The name hits her like cold water. She's heard it whispered in the ER when gang members arrive with knife wounds and bullet holes. The man who controls half of Seoul's underworld. The man whose enemies disappear. "I'm just a nurse," she whispers. "You're more than that now." Min-seok's eyes find hers in the rearview mirror. "You're a witness, a liability. Or, if you're smart, you'll be useful." The estate rises from the hillside like something from a dream. Traditional Korean architecture meets modern fortress, curved tile roofs and stone walls, security cameras hidden in ancient-looking eaves. Guards materialize from shadows as the SUV rolls through iron gates. Inside, the house smells of incense and expensive wood. They carry young Min to a room that's been prepared. Medical supplies already laid out on silk-covered tables, as if they knew this would happen. As if violence is simply part of the routine. "Work," Min-seok commands, positioning himself by the door. His hand never leaves the gun at his hip. Teresa's hands don't shake as she cuts away young Min's blood-soaked shirt. They never shake during emergencies. Only after. The wound is deep, a knife, she thinks, not a bullet. It missed the major vessels by centimeters. Lucky. If you can call any of this lucky. She works in silence, cleaning, stitching, her fingers remembering every lesson from 3 years of trauma training. Young Min watches her through half-closed eyes, his face unreadable. "Why did you stop?" he finally asks in that silk and stone voice. "In the alley. You could have walked away." Teresa meets his gaze as she ties off the last suture. "I'm a nurse. I don't walk away." Something shifts in his expression. Not quite a smile, something darker, more dangerous. "Neither do I," he says softly. Min-seok steps closer, and Teresa feels the weight of his suspicion like a hand around her throat. "You'll stay here tonight. We need to make sure he's stable. And we need to make sure you understand the cost of speaking about what you've seen." The room suddenly feels very small, very far from the careful, ordered life she built, very far from Daniel and safety and everything she thought she knew. Young Min's eyes haven't left her face. "Don't be afraid," he whispers. But somehow, that makes her more afraid than anything else. Daniel was pacing when she finally walked through the door at 3 in the morning. "Teresa. God, Teresa." He crossed the apartment in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms so tight she could barely breathe. "I've been calling you for hours. Your shift ended at 11. I didn't know what to think." She stood there, frozen, his cologne wrapping around her like it always did. Expensive. Clean. Safe. Everything the rain-soaked alley wasn't. "I'm sorry." Her voice came out smaller than she meant it to. "There was an emergency. I couldn't get to my phone." He pulled back, cupping her face in his hands. Those soft hands that had never known real violence, never pushed a needle into a collapsing vein or felt someone's life slip away beneath their fingers. "You're shaking." She was. She hadn't realized. "Come here." He guided her to the couch, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, disappeared into the kitchen. She heard the kettle click on, heard him moving through their life with the easy confidence of a man who'd never been afraid, who'd never had reason to be. When he came back with chamomile tea, her favorite, the one that sometimes helped with the anxiety, she wanted to tell him everything. Wanted to say, I saved a man tonight and now I think I'm in danger, and have him make it make sense the way he always did. But the lieutenant's words echoed too loud. Speak of this to no one. Just a rough case, she said instead, curling her fingers around the warm mug. Lost someone on the table. Young guy. It got to me. Daniel sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders, and she let herself lean into him. This was what she'd needed 2 years ago when they met. This steadiness, this certainty. She'd been drowning then. Her mother's cancer diagnosis had come with a price tag that might as well have been the moon. Surgery costs that insurance wouldn't cover. Experimental treatments that were her only chance. Teresa had been working double shifts, selling everything she owned, and it still wasn't enough. Then Daniel appeared in the hospital cafeteria one random Tuesday, buying coffee, and somehow they'd started talking. He was kind. He listened. He didn't flinch when she told him about her anxiety, about the nights she couldn't sleep, about growing up watching her mother work 3 jobs after her father vanished. 3 weeks later, the money appeared. An envelope slipped under her apartment door with enough cash to cover everything. No note. No explanation. Just salvation in unmarked bills. When she'd asked Daniel, tearful, desperate to know, he'd only smiled that soft smile of his and said, Sometimes the universe provides, Teresa. Don't question blessings. She'd known then. Known it was him, even if he'd never admit it. What kind of man does that? What kind of man saves a stranger's mother and asks for nothing in return? The kind you marry. The kind you build a safe, predictable life with. I talked to my mother today, Daniel said now, his voice warm against her hair. She wants to finalize the wedding venue next month. The one in Jeju, remember? With the ocean view? Teresa nodded, watching steam rise from her tea. Jeju. White sand. Flowers. A future that looked nothing like rain-soaked alleys and men who called each other boss. I know you're scared, he said softly. I know planning a wedding feels big, but I promise you, Teresa, you're safe with me. I'll always take care of you. His words should have comforted her. They always had before. But tonight, with the ghost of young Min's touch still burning on her cheek, with the weight of secrets pressing against her ribs, she wondered for the first time why a pharmaceutical rep had $50,000 in cash just lying around, and why he'd never wanted her to ask questions about where it came from. Teresa came home to find a velvet box on her doorstep. Inside, nestled in silk, was a diamond bracelet that could have paid her rent for a year. No note, no explanation. Just cold brilliance catching the hallway light. Beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. She shoved it back in the box and left it on the kitchen counter. Her hands trembling the way they always did after the crisis passed. Daniel picked it up that evening, turning it over with the careful appraisal of someone who understood luxury goods. Where did this come from? I don't know. The lie tasted bitter. Someone must have the wrong address. But she knew. Of course she knew. The next morning, she spotted him on her walk to the subway. A man in a dark suit, standing too still among the morning commuters. When she turned the corner, another one appeared half a block behind her. They didn't hide. They wanted her to see them. Her chest tightened. The old panic clawed at her throat. The same feeling from childhood, when strange men watched their apartment after her father vanished, when her mother told her to keep her head down and never, ever ask question. She'd spent 20 years building a life where no one watched her, where she was safe in her invisibility. Now she felt eyes everywhere. At the hospital, she pulled a double shift, losing herself in the familiar chaos of the ER. Gunshot wound to the shoulder, elderly woman with chest pain, teenager who'd wrapped his motorcycle around a telephone pole. This was her world. Clean, controlled, purposeful. When her shift ended at midnight, one of the suited men was waiting by the staff entrance. "Miss Hannah." He bowed slightly. "Mr. Kang wishes to speak with you." "Tell Mr. Kang I'm not interested." She tried to walk past him. He stepped into her path, not threatening, but immovable. "It's for your safety. Rival gangs know you saved his life. They may try to use you to get to him." The words hit like ice water. "That's his problem, not mine. With respect, miss, you made it your problem when you stopped the bleeding." She wanted to scream, wanted to run. Instead, she pulled out her phone with shaking fingers and dialed the number his lieutenant had forced her to save that night in the alley. Young Min answered on the first ring. His voice was smoke and silk, that Korean accent wrapping around English words like a caress. "Teresa, call off your dogs. They're keeping you alive. I didn't ask for this. I don't want your gifts. I don't want your protection. I want my life back." Silence stretched between them. Then, quietly, "Your life changed the moment you touched me. I'm simply making sure you survive the consequences. I'm a nurse. I save people. That's all I did. And now I'm saving you." His voice hardened. "Whether you accept it or not." She hung up. Her whole body shaking now, the panic attack she'd been holding back for 3 days, finally crashing over her. The bodyguard's expression softened. "Please, miss, let us do our job. Mr. Kang, he doesn't make gestures like this lightly. I don't care what they mean to him." But 2 weeks later, she learned exactly how far Kang Young-min's gestures reached. The hospital director called an emergency staff meeting. His face was gray, his hands clasped too tightly on the podium. "As of this morning, Myeongdong General has been acquired by Silver Tiger Medical Group. All current staff contracts will be honored. No one is losing their jobs." Teresa's blood went cold. Silver Tiger, the ghost of Gangnam's legitimate business front. That night, a handwritten note appeared under her apartment door. His handwriting was surprisingly elegant. "Now I can make sure you're always safe. Whether you want me to or not, YM." She crumpled it in her fist, tears of rage and helplessness burning her eyes. He'd bought her entire world. Daniel's face lit up when Teresa told him about the new pharmaceutical contract. She'd mentioned it casually over dinner, just another piece of hospital gossip. But he set down his fork like she'd announced a lottery win. "MedCorp secured the Myeongdong contract?" His voice carried an edge she'd never heard before. Excitement, she thought, or maybe ambition. That's incredible, Teresa. This changes everything for us." She pushed her japchae around her plate, suddenly not hungry. I guess. It's just medications. We go through suppliers all the time." "No, you don't understand." He reached across the table, gripping her hand. His palm was damp. "This is the account I've been chasing for 2 years. Do you know what this means for my career? For our future?" The word "our" should have warmed her. Instead, something cold settled in her chest. Over the next week, Daniel started asking questions. Casual ones at first. Which doctors ordered the most medications? Who made the purchasing decisions? Then the questions shifted, became more specific, and always circled back to the same place. That patient you told me about, the one from the alley. Young Min. Daniel was scrolling through his phone, not looking at her. He's still recovering at the hospital, right? Teresa's hands tightened around her coffee mug. She hadn't told Daniel much about that night, just that she'd helped someone injured, that it had shaken her up. The lieutenant's warning still echoed in her mind. Speak of this to no one. Why are you asking? Just curious? He glanced up, smiled. That same smile that had made her feel safe when they first met. You mentioned he was important, connected. I was thinking, maybe you could check on him. Build rapport. Build rapport? The words felt strange in her mouth. You're good with patience, Teresa. That's one of the things I love about you. You care. He set his phone down, gave her his full attention now. If he's as influential as people say, having a positive relationship with him could open doors for the hospital, for my company, for us. There it was again. Us. But it felt less like an invitation and more like a wait. Daniel, he's not a networking opportunity. He's a patient. Of course, of course. He raised his hands. Backing off. I'm not asking you to do anything wrong. Just be yourself. Be the compassionate nurse you are. That's all. But it wasn't all. Teresa felt it in the way he brought young Min up every few days. Casual mentions that felt calculated. How's your VIP patient doing? Or, I bet someone like him appreciates quality care. Or, these connections matter in Seoul, you know. She wanted to tell him to stop. Wanted to explain that every time she passed young Min's private room, her heart raced. Not from attraction, though she'd be lying if she said his sharp eyes didn't unsettle something in her. But from fear. From the memory of the lieutenant's warning. From the knowledge that she'd stumbled into a world where people disappeared for knowing too much. Instead, she told herself it was the anxiety talking. The same anxiety that made her count her steps, that woke her at 3 a.m. with her heart hammering, that turned normal situations into catastrophes in her mind. Daniel loved her. He wanted what was best for them. He was just ambitious, just excited about his career. That was normal. That was healthy, even. So why did his questions feel like fingers tightening around her throat? I'll check on him, she heard herself say. When I have time. Daniel's smile widened. He kissed her forehead, lingered there a moment too long. That's my girl, he whispered. And Teresa wondered when those words had started feeling like a cage. The night shift ended like any other. Teresa pushed through the hospital's side exit, exhaustion pulling at her shoulders, her scrubs still carrying the smell of antiseptic and coffee. She was thinking about her bed, about Daniel's text she hadn't answered, about whether she had enough energy to shower before collapsing. She didn't see the van until it was too late. It came from nowhere, black, windowless, screeching to a stop that made her heart lurch. The door flew open, and hands reached for her, rough and fast. She tried to scream, but one hand clamped over her mouth, another grabbed her waist, and suddenly she was being dragged toward the darkness inside. Terror flooded her veins. This was it. The lieutenant's warning had come true. There are people who would kill you just for keeping him alive. Then the night exploded. Gunshots cracked the air. Sharp. Deafening. The hands released her, and she stumbled backward, hitting the pavement hard. Men were shouting in Korean, shadows moving fast, and through her shock, she saw him. Young Min. He moved like something out of a nightmare, swift, precise, terrifying. His gun rose and fell with mechanical efficiency. One of her attackers dropped. then another. The driver tried to run, and young Min shot out his knee without hesitation, without even breaking stride. Teresa couldn't breathe, couldn't look away. This wasn't the wounded man she'd saved in the alley. This was the ghost of Gangnam. This was why they whispered his name in the dark. It was over in seconds. Bodies on the ground, the van's engine still running, and young Min standing in the middle of it all, smoke curling from his gun, his face empty of everything except cold control. Then he turned to her. His expression shifted, something almost human flickering behind his eyes. He holstered his weapon and crossed to her in 3 long strides, dropping to one knee beside her trembling form. "Are you hurt?" His voice was different now, softer. The voice from the alley. She shook her head but couldn't speak. Her whole body was shaking, her hands pressed against the pavement, her mind replaying the shots, the bodies, the casual way he'd ended 3 lives without blinking. "Teresa." He said her name like a command and a plea. "Look at me." She did, and what she saw in his face made her throat tighten. Concern. Real, unguarded concern. "I need to get you somewhere safe," he said. "Can you stand?" She wanted to refuse, wanted to run back into the hospital, call the police, pretend this nightmare would end if she just followed the rules. But her legs wouldn't work, her voice wouldn't come, and when he lifted her gently, so gently, into his arms, she didn't fight. His car was waiting. Of course it was. His men materialized from the shadows, efficient and silent, already dealing with the scene like they'd done this 100 times before. She sat in the back seat, wrapped in young Min's jacket that smelled like expensive cologne and gunpowder, and watched Seoul blur past the windows. Her mind felt disconnected from her body. She'd just watched a man kill for her. Kill to save her. The horror of it sat beside something else she didn't want to name, something that whispered, "You're alive because of him." The penthouse rose above the city like a fortress made of glass and steel. Young Min guided her inside with a hand on her back, protective, possessive, and she was too numb to resist. The space was beautiful, cold, nothing like she'd imagined. He sat her on a leather sofa, poured her whiskey she didn't ask for, and knelt in front of her again. His hands, the same hands that had just killed, gently checked her arms, her face, looking for injuries. "You're safe now," he said quietly. But as Teresa met his dark, unreadable eyes, she realized something that made her heart hammer all over again. She wasn't safe. She'd never be safe again. Not from his enemies. Not from his world. And maybe not from him? Teresa hadn't meant to wander, but the penthouse felt like a museum, all glass and steel and silence, and after 3 days of being watched, guarded, kept, she needed to move, to breathe, to pretend she still had some control over her own feet. The study door was open, just a crack. She told herself she was looking for a bathroom, told herself she wasn't snooping, but her nursing instincts had always been sharp, noticing what others missed, reading the small signs that told the real story. The room smelled like leather and smoke, dark wood, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and on the desk, catching the afternoon light through the window, a small lacquered box sat open. Inside, nestled on black silk, was a jade pendant. Teresa's breath caught. She knew that pendant, the carved phoenix, the particular shade of green, like spring leaves after rain. The silver chain, delicate as a whisper. Her hand moved before she could stop it, lifting the pendant into the light. It was cool against her palm, familiar in a way that made her chest tighten. 3 years ago, her mother had been sick. Stage 3 breast cancer. The hospital bills had buried them. Teresa working double shifts, her mother's savings evaporating like morning fog. They'd been weeks away from losing everything when the donation came. Anonymous, substantial, enough to cover the treatments, the medications, the surgery that saved her mother's life. And with it, a jade pendant. No note, no name, just the pendant, wrapped in tissue paper, tucked inside the envelope like a signature without words. Her mother wore it every day now, kept it close. Said it reminded her that angels existed, even when the world felt dark. Teresa had kept the matching one, this one, in her jewelry box. A twin. She'd studied it 100 times, wondering who would give so much and ask for nothing. "You shouldn't be in here," Young Min's voice came from the doorway. Not angry. Something else. Something that sounded almost like resignation. Teresa turned, the pendant still dangling from her fingers. "This belonged to you." He didn't move, didn't deny it. 3 years ago, she continued, her voice shaking now, someone donated money to my mother's cancer fund. A lot of money, enough to save her life, and they left a pendant exactly like this one. The silence stretched between them, like a wire pulled taut. "That was you," she whispered. "You saved my mother." Young Min stepped into the room, his expression unreadable. "You should put that back." "Why?" The word came out sharper than she intended. "Why would you do that? You didn't know us. We were nobody to you." "Everyone is somebody to someone." His eyes met hers, and for just a moment she saw past the ghost of Gangnam, past the cold efficiency and calculated danger. She saw something raw, something almost like grief. "Tell me the truth," Teresa said. Her hands were shaking again, not with fear this time, but with the weight of understanding she wasn't ready for. "How long have you been watching me? How long have you known who I was?" He moved closer. Close enough that she could see the scar along his jawline, faded but permanent. Close enough that his voice dropped to something almost gentle. "Longer than you think?" "That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give you right now." Teresa looked down at the pendant in her palm. The phoenix caught the light, seeming to move, to breathe. All this time, she'd thought she was building a life separate from chaos. Thought Daniel represented safety, stability, everything her childhood had lacked. But this man, this dangerous, impossible man, had been there in her darkest moment. Had saved her mother when no one else would. Had been watching, protecting, caring in ways she couldn't begin to understand. "Why?" she asked again, softer now. Young Min took the pendant from her hand, his fingers brushing hers for just a heartbeat. "Because," he said quietly, "some debts can never be repaid. Only passed forward." He closed the lacquered box, but not before she saw his hand tremble. Just once, just barely. And Teresa realized, whatever connected them, it ran deeper than one rainy night in an alley. It ran back through years she couldn't see yet. Daniel's text comes through at 11 p.m. "Need to see you. Alone. I have proof about Young Min. Something terrible. You're in danger, T. Meet me at the old Dongdaemun warehouse. Midnight. Please." Teresa stares at her phone in the bathroom of Young Min's penthouse, her reflection ghostly in the mirror. She hasn't spoken to Daniel in 3 weeks, not since the night she chose to stay, since she stopped answering his calls begging her to come home. Her hands tremble as she types back, "What kind of proof?" His response is immediate. "The kind that'll save your life. Trust me one more time. Trust." The word sits heavy in her chest. She thinks of Daniel's smile the day he proposed, the way he held her after her panic attacks, the careful future they'd planned. Then she thinks of young Min's hand on her face in the alley, the way he looks at her like she's something precious he's afraid to break. She slips out without telling anyone. The warehouse squats in the industrial district like a sleeping beast, windows dark, metal siding streaked with rust. Teresa's cab pulls away, taillights disappearing into the fog. And suddenly the silence feels thick. Wrong. "Daniel?" Her voice echoes off concrete. A door opens. He steps into the dim light, and her heart lurches. He looks thinner, older, shadows carved under his eyes. "Teresa." His voice cracks. "Thank God you came." She moves toward him, and that's when she sees it. The slight shift in his posture, the way his eyes flick past her shoulder, the way he doesn't move to embrace her. "What proof, Daniel? What's going on?" Floodlights explode across the warehouse. Teresa throws her arm across her eyes, stumbling backward. Dark figures pour from every corner, men in tactical gear, weapons raised, voices shouting commands in English and Korean. "FBI! Hands where we can see them! Don't move! Down on the ground, now!" Teresa's knees hit concrete, hands over her head, her mind spinning. This isn't real. This can't be real. Daniel walks toward her slowly. When he crouches down, she sees the badge clipped to his belt. Federal agent, the ring of metal against his hip. "I'm sorry," he says, and he sounds like he means it. "I really am." Her voice won't work. "You're undercover, 2 years. He runs a hand through his hair, and the gesture is so familiar it makes her stomach twist. "Treasury Department, Organized Crime Division. I was assigned to get close to the Bayako Syndicate, and then I met you, and you were so—" He stops, swallows hard. "You were working at Myeongdong General, right in the path of every gang operation in Seoul. It seemed like fate." Teresa feels something cold spreading through her chest. "You used me." "I tried to." His jaw tightens. "I thought if we got engaged, if you trusted me enough, I could use you to get inside, but you never gave me anything. You were too good, too—" He looks away. "Then Kang Young Min happened, and you did what I couldn't do in 2 years. You got inside." The agents are setting up equipment now. Cameras, recording devices, a whole surveillance operation. This warehouse isn't random. It's a command center. "I called you here to warn you," Daniel says quietly. "But my supervisors have other plans. They want to use you as bait. Force young Min into the open." Teresa's breath comes short and fast, her anxiety clawing up her throat. "You brought me here to trap him? They're going to leak that you've been captured, that you're here, unprotected. Young Min will come for you. He has to. And when he does—" Daniel's voice drops. "We'll be waiting." She stares at the man she almost married, this stranger wearing Daniel's face. "How long?" she whispers. "How long were any of it real?" He reaches for her hand. She jerks away. "Teresa, please. I'm trying to save your life. Young Min is dangerous. Whatever you think you feel for him, don't." Her voice is steel now, cutting through her fear. "Don't you dare tell me what I feel." The warehouse door rolls open behind them. An older man in a suit walks in, authority radiating from every step. "Miss Hannah," he says, I'm Special Agent Morrison. We have a lot to discuss. And Teresa realizes with perfect, terrible clarity, she's not a witness anymore. She's the trap. The police station smells like burnt coffee and fear. Teresa sits in a gray interrogation room, her wrists aching from where the zip ties cut in before they finally removed them. Detective Park across from her hasn't stopped talking for 20 minutes, his voice a steady drumbeat of accusations she can barely process. You're protecting him, a known criminal. Do you understand what that makes you? She doesn't answer. What can she say? That she's a nurse who made a choice in an alley? That somewhere along the way, the man she saved became the man she can't stop thinking about? The door bursts open. Young Min stands in the doorway, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. His suit is immaculate, his face unreadable, but his eyes find hers immediately, and something in them makes her chest tighten. Let her go, he says quietly. Detective Park shoots to his feet. You don't give orders here, Kang. I'm not giving orders. Young Min steps into the room, and despite the handcuffs on his wrists, he moves like a man in complete control. I'm making an offer. Release Teresa Hanna. Drop all charges against her. In return, I'll surrender myself. Fully. No lawyers, no delays. You want me? I'm here. The room goes absolutely silent. Teresa's breath catches. What are you doing? He doesn't look at her. His focus stays locked on the detective, whose expression has shifted from anger to shock to something like disbelief. You're serious, Detective Park says slowly. Completely. Young mine, no. Teresa stands, her chair scraping loud against the floor. You can't do this. I'm not worth... Now he looks at her. Really looks at her. And the tenderness in his eyes nearly breaks her. You're worth more than you know, he says softly. Min-seok appears in the doorway, his face drawn tight with worry. Hyungnim, please reconsider. It's done. Min-seok. Detective Park glances between them, calculating. This doesn't erase your crimes, Kang. You know that. I know. Young Min's voice is steady, resigned. But she walks free. That's the deal. Teresa feels tears burning behind her eyes. This man, this dangerous, powerful man, is giving up everything. For her, a woman he barely knows. A nurse who stumbled into his world by accident. I don't understand, she whispers. Min-seok steps forward, his jaw tight. Then let me explain something, Ms. Hanna. His voice carries an edge she's never heard before, raw emotion breaking through his usual stoic mask. My Hyungnim didn't start out as what you think he is. He was a doctor, a medical student, top of his class. He had a future saving lives, just like you. Young Min closes his eyes briefly. Min-seok, no, she deserves to know. Min-seok's hands clench at his sides. His family was killed by a rival gang when he was 24. His parents, his younger sister. While he was at the hospital doing rounds, they died. And the police did nothing. So he became what he needed to become, to survive, to fight back. Teresa's knees weaken. She grips the edge of the table. But he never stopped being a healer, Min-seok continues, his voice softer now. Every victim of gang violence who comes through hospitals in this district, their bills are paid anonymously. Medical equipment, scholarships for nursing students, funding for trauma units. That's him. That's always been him. She stares at young Min, seeing him completely differently now. The ghost, the kingpin, the man who built an empire on violence, but never forgot what it meant to save a life. Why? Her voice breaks. Why me? Young Min finally meets her eyes fully, and what she sees there steals her breath. Because, he says quietly, you reminded me who I used to be. Before the darkness. Before everything. You saved my life, Teresa. Let me save yours. Detective Park's phone buzzes. He glances at it, frowns, then looks up at young Min with something almost like respect. The deal's accepted. She's free to go. The detective's voice was flat, clinical. Mr. Park, you're under arrest for evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit murder. Teresa watched from across the precinct as Daniel's face crumpled. The man she'd planned to marry stood there in handcuffs, and all she felt was a strange, hollow emptiness where love should have been. I did it for us, Daniel said, his eyes finding hers through the chaos of officers and lawyers. To get you back. To save you from him. But she wasn't the woman who needed saving anymore. Young Min's lawyer, Mr. Cho, arrived an hour later with a manila folder that changed everything. He set it on the table in front of her with the gentleness of someone handling something sacred. Miss Hannah, there's something you need to see. Inside were bank records, hospital payment receipts, all anonymous, all dated back 10 years, to the exact months her mother was dying, when the bills had piled so high Teresa thought she'd drown in them. Your mother's cancer treatment, Mr. Cho said quietly. The experimental therapy that gave her 2 extra years, the private room, the pain management. It was all paid for by the same anonymous donor. Teresa's hands trembled as she traced the dates. She remembered those years, working double shifts, sleeping in hospital chairs, praying for miracles she couldn't afford. And then, impossibly, the bills had been paid. The hospital said a donor had covered everything. She'd never known who. Kang Young Min, Mr. Cho said. He's been watching over you since you were 22 years old. The room tilted. Why? That, Mr. Cho said softly, is a question only he can answer. She found Young Min on the penthouse terrace at sunset, the city sprawling below like a living thing. He didn't turn when she approached, but she saw his shoulders tense. You paid for my mother's treatment. Her voice barely carried over the wind. Yes. For 2 years. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. For a stranger. Now he turned. His face was unguarded in a way she'd never seen. Raw, almost vulnerable. Not a stranger, Teresa. Never a stranger. Then who am I to you? He moved closer, and she saw something in his eyes that made her heart ache. You're the woman who ran into traffic when you were 12 years old to save a dog. You're the girl who sat with your mother every night, reading to her even when she couldn't respond. You're the nurse who stops for bleeding strangers in alleys because you can't walk past suffering. How do you know these things? Because I've known you since before you knew yourself. He took a breath. Your father worked for my organization. When he died, when my enemies killed him to hurt me, I made your mother a promise that I would keep you safe, that I would watch over you, that his daughter would never suffer because of my world. Teresa's knees went weak. All these years, all these moments she'd thought were coincidence or luck, or answered prayers. You've been protecting me my whole life. Yes. And Daniel, the attack? Competitors who discovered my investment in you. They thought hurting you would hurt me. His jaw tightened. They were right. She should run. She should thank him and walk away and build a normal life far from this dangerous man and his impossible devotion. But instead she stepped closer. Tell me the truth, she whispered. All of it, what loving you would really mean. Young Min's hand came up, cupping her face with a tenderness that broke something open inside her. It means danger. It means living in a world where people like Daniel will always try to use you against me. It means I can give you everything except safety. And if I choose it anyway? His thumb traced her cheekbone. Then I spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it. Teresa closed her eyes. The safe life she'd built was ash. But standing here, with this impossible man who'd loved her from the shadows for 20 years, this felt like coming home. Sometimes the life we think we want isn't the life we need. Teresa learned that safety isn't always found in predictability, but in someone who sees all of you, the broken parts, the brave parts, the parts you hide, and chooses you anyway. She learned that love doesn't always announce itself with flowers and promises. Sometimes it works quietly in the background for years, asking nothing in return, and she learned that the most dangerous choice isn't always the wrong one. Sometimes it's the only honest one. Real love doesn't try to change you or save you from yourself. It meets you exactly where you are and says, I see you, all of you, and I'm not going anywhere. If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button. There are more stories waiting. Stories about second chances, unexpected love, and the courage it takes to choose the life you truly want. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.